I started working to take these really big articles and shrink them down into infographics, 1, 2 pages, really simple text.
Well, hey, Katie, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well, Rafi. How are you?
I am doing all right, doing wonderful. I'm excited about talking really about using visual imagery to convey, clinically important information to patients and clients. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and then kind of what brought you to doing what you're doing at OT Graphically.
Yeah, well, my name's Katie Caspero. I have been a pediatric occupational therapist in the Pittsburgh area for about almost 8 years now. I really love research, and I was a research assistant since I could be, like my sophomore year. And I knew I wanted to be involved in research in some way, but I knew I needed that clinical expertise to really understand what was actually going to be beneficial. So what ended up happening was I saw that there was a gap between people having time to stay up to date as well as knowing what was evidence-based just by, having a 10-hour day in the clinic and then getting home and just like eating and going to bed. And that was kind of all you had. So that's where I came up with the idea for OT Graphically, where I have a love for art and design and photography as well. So I took that hobby and I said, what if I can blend my love of research, really art and science, and I started working to take these really big articles and shrink them down into infographics, 1, 2 pages, really simple text with images that really just got to the point of like, okay, what did they do in this study and why is that important for me and how do I use this information? So that's how OT Graphically was born during the pandemic when I had extra time because my caseload was cut in half. That really uh, springboarded the idea forward just to have that time. So right now we have, I do one-on-one design, so kind of like a graphic designer of research, but I've really shifted to also having a membership site called the OT Graphically Library, where I bring together occupational therapists to help them quickly and effectively stay up to date and utilize the latest research so they can provide the best care. So we do that using these infographics as well as online journal clubs and discussions. And then we also have a course to help them remember, how to do that process of becoming evidence-based.
Nice. So, are the bulk of your clients that you're working with then are they clinicians or organizations that are looking at kind of getting information out there, or are they a bunch of clinicians looking themselves to find evidence-based resources for their own treatments and their own clinical practice?
I would say right now I have a few big organizations I work with just from a design standpoint, but mostly are clinicians that really want to get the information of the research and then also share that with their clients in a way that's effective and engaging.
Yeah, and I'm sure you probably know a little bit more about this than I do, but infographics tend to be, I mean, they go viral on social media all the time. You'll see people sharing them and all that kind of stuff. How much do you know how effective they are at really communicating or conveying information? And if so, like how much more effective is it to see something visually, like, okay, this is a diagram or whatever, versus like obviously reading a journal article is not the most stimulating thing in the in the world for some people.
Yeah, I should probably have a number for this, but I
Yeah.
know right now it takes 14 years for research to be
Yeah.
actually utilized in practice. And so there's been a lot of research on translate knowledge translation, which is what this process is. But there's a lot of research that infographics improve the speed at which you uptake information and use the information. So that is definitely a huge, benefit to turn around. So our goal really at OT Graphically, our mission is to reduce that timeline to 5 years of
Ooh.
putting research into practice, which is a lofty goal, but you got to
Yeah.
aim big.
Yeah. Aim big. Yeah, I think we had somebody on the show probably 2 years ago, and he runs a marketing firm, and their whole job is knowledge translation, like working with public health folks to try to do this. And he talked a lot about the importance of visual ways of communicating information. So it very much is kind of in the same line. I wonder. So what's your process then? Let's say an organization says we want our OT department to do more evidence based treatment in this area, call it sensory integration, call it whatever. Do you go then and like find the articles for them, or do they come to you with what they want and then you're kind of just synthesizing it and putting it in a pretty graphical, methodology for uptake?
Yeah, so our membership is very member driven content.
Okay.
So whatever they say is what I do. I don't really pick unless nobody's asking me for anything, but that rarely I have a very long list, so that doesn't usually happen. But yeah, so a lot of times we also have something called evidence maps. So which is kind of like a spider web of research. So that's kind of the first thing I do. I make these maps of, what's the evidence out there, what works basically, and what are the interventions and things that they can easily find, the articles. And that's more so for like if you need to show into insurance that this is an effective intervention that you're already doing, you just need the support behind it.
Yeah.
So that's one way of doing it. But then yeah, the members of of a whole business can come into our membership, and they would really decide, okay, these are the journal club topics we would like to have, or an infographic we'd like to have, and I'd add it to our list, and I would review articles about it that are within 5 years of publication, because again, we're trying to turn around that timeline. So that's actually a really big part of it. There are articles obviously that are older that are much more beneficial, so like we will make an exception to that. But yeah, so we read through the article, outline it, and really then I actually go back to the original author to make sure the information is represented clearly, because it's really important for me that these authors that did that information and did all that research, spent their lives doing their
Yeah.
dissertation on this one topic, really they're the one driving how this information is presented. So that's also another big point. I really it's really a way to help the authors disseminate their information too.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, like I'm assuming you get a pretty high response rate when you reach out to the authors. Has
Mhm.
there ever been anybody that's like, "Oh no, I don't want you to do a infographic on my article"?
I think not really, unless they didn't really understand what I was asking, not so much. But yeah, they're always very, very willing. And I let them, use it to their needs. And they actually usually, have done journal clubs for us as well. So it's a very much like a give and take opportunity, and it's really a win-win for us, because then the authors are able to just like really answer their questions kind of on the spot. So as much as possible, I try to include them in the process.
Yeah. And you do journal clubs as a part of this then, huh?
Hmm.
And
Yep.
how does that work? Is it just you send an email out, this is the topic we're covering this
Mhm.
month, or how often, how frequently?
Yeah, we do them like 1 to 2 times a month, depending on the month. This season's a little slower because of the
Yeah.
holidays, but yeah, we try to do one adult and one pediatric a month. And yeah, we those are member requested topics, and we use infographics to help that discussion. So that way you don't have to read the whole article; you just read the infographic, and you get a good idea of what's going on. So that's kind of how, because I remember being in journal clubs and I'm like reading it,
Yeah.
5 minutes before the actual journal club. So it's really, really to shrink down that time and really get to the point of journal clubs, which is the discussion part. So, and just like, okay, great, but how do we use this information? Should we use this information? Um, is the article biased? Is it the people who have this product trying to promote it? All those really important questions come up.
Yeah. And then tell me a little bit about just the process of designing one of these
Mhm.
infographics. Like what are the big things that are in your mind when you're putting something like this together? Are there like pieces of, obviously, like you want the research, you want the conclusions and the findings and all that, but just talk to me a little bit about your process for kind of structuring the layout of one of these infographics on a specific article or topic or something like that.
Yeah, I definitely think like, okay, who's my audience? Who's reading this? What do they need to know? So I try my best to make it for like the end result, which is the client, and the OT. So that way it can kind of be a 2 for 1. But sometimes it kind of hits just the OT because it doesn't really make sense for the client to know
Yeah.
like the psychometric properties of this assessment. So yeah, I really think about the audience first, and put myself in their shoes. I'm a very empathetic person, so I use that skill pretty frequently to
Yeah.
say, okay, what would I need to know if I have a client in front of me that is struggling with this? Or when we really focus just on interventions, to be honest, like, because that's really, as clinicians, what the bulk of what we need to know, what interventions work and what doesn't work and how do we use it.
Yeah. And then so you think about the audience and then you structure it.
Mhm.
Is there a specific um, layout that works as far as
Mhm.
like this part comes up here at the top and this part will come here in the middle, or is it kind of dependent on the subject matter and the available articles? Maybe you're doing 2 or 3 articles in one infographic instead of one.
Yeah, I kind of keep the basic structure of like the scientific process, to be honest. So like a background, you know, we know a lot of the background, but sometimes that's helpful just to get the context, what they did and did it work. So that's kind of the structure. And then maybe like a few takeaways, if you learn one thing, bottom line, this is what you should know from this
Yeah.
information.
Yeah. And then are these infographics being used by, I mean, obviously they're being used by clinicians to
Mhm.
learn and read more about the interventions, but have you seen folks using them like on social media and trying to promote them through their own clinic or something like that to educate the population at large?
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely a big part. If people have a blog or something, we let them share it that way. Yeah, just kind of any advocacy to help with health literacy and health education is really important to us. So I just think about all the times where I was given a piece of paper that's like full of text at the end of an appointment. And I was like, what
Yeah.
what just happened in the last hour? But to have something that's like really tangible that you might even like hang on your fridge or, you know, really save on your desktop and go back to can be really powerful. So yeah, I'd say using them to, even I use them, I print them out because I feel like people, to be honest, recently, like a digital file, we have so many digital files. So
Yeah.
having something as a
It's
paper copy
overload.
is actually a little more meaningful right now. And I had a client, for example, who she was struggling with auditory sensitivity. So one of the articles was talking about that. And it really, like, she was just so interested in like the science behind it. She was very, very smart. Um, older child I was working with, and it really it definitely changed the course of her care, of like her motivation behind like, oh, okay, I see why you're doing this activity with me. It's because of that article, and that's why. So it definitely helps, like, having that for you to feel confident in what you're doing works, but also to, you know, bring the patient on board and let them know, like, this is why there's research in it. It's not misinformation. It's solid information.
Yeah. No, I think that's huge. It's especially, in the pain space too. A lot of times patients feel like, they don't they're told maybe that their MRI is totally normal, so they shouldn't be feeling pain. And like that's just one of those areas that recently people have been exploring. Okay, the importance of showing, like, validating the patient or the client's experience, and then use, if you have research to show it, it just makes it all that more powerful to for clients. They can step into that role of, okay, what I'm, this is real, and now we can kind of tackle this problem or overcome this obstacle, right?
Yeah, it kind of takes the emotion out of it
Yeah.
in when it needs to be. You need emotion often with therapy, but it helps them take the emotion out of that conversation.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Um, well, I always ask this near the end here. If there are just 1 or 2 main takeaways you would want a listener to kind of come away with from this conversation about, maybe it's about infographics, maybe it's about knowledge translation in general, what would they be?
That's a great question.
Curveball.
Yeah. I'm just trying to not do more than two because that's usually
Oh
my
yeah.
MO. I would say there's power in giving education to your clients, and in the way that using the words that they use and in the way that they learn. That's really important. And then staying up to date is how our profession will be able to be valuable in the future. So really knowing this evidence is not really an option. We really need
Yeah.
to be aware of it because there are others trying to do OT because they realize how great it is. And not that, it's a turf war, but it's really important to really understand what works and what we know and know our expertise and be confident in that. I think we can lose our confidence over time, and evidence-based practice is not scary. It is a tool, and it's very empowering too.
Yeah. No, I think that's super important. I tell people all the time, either students that come through the clinic or when I used to teach at the university and now with clients, I'm like, your main benefit, the main value you bring to any interaction with a patient or a client is not what you do with your hands or the exercise you make them do in the clinic. It's the fact that you have all of this great knowledge and then you're able to take that knowledge and kind of like bring it to bear on their specific situation. And part of that means you need to know what's out there, right? You need to know the evidence and how to implement it, because that's really where our value comes into play. So that's awesome. Um, where can people find out more about you, about OT Graphically, and maybe even working with you and having you do some designs for them?
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. Hold on. I'm going to drink some tea really quick before I answer that
Sure.
question. So you can find out more about us at otgraphically.com. That's our website where you can find more information on our membership, or if you need any design services. That's the best way.
Awesome. Cool deal. Well, Katie, thanks so much. Have a good one.
Thank you.